Imagine waking up one morning and finding ice on the inside of your window, roads buried under snow, trains frozen on the tracks, rivers turned into solid ice. Across Britain, an entire country slowly ground to a halt. What began as an ordinary cold spell became one of the harshest winters in modern memory. For weeks, the snow kept falling. The cold kept tightening its grip. And Britain was about to experience what many would later call the Great Freeze. That winter arrived suddenly and with unusual force. Bitter winds swept in from the northeast, spreading across Britain and bringing freezing temperatures with them. At first, it seemed like nothing more than an ordinary cold spell. Rain in the north quickly turned to snow, and the snowfall spread steadily across the country. Most people assumed it would last only a few days. But the snow didn't stop. Britain was entering one of the harshest winters in modern memory. A powerful snowstorm soon swept across much of the country. Strong winds drove the snow into enormous drifts. Roads disappeared beneath the white landscape. Villages began to lose contact with the outside world. Even regions that normally experienced mild winters found themselves buried under deep snow. Daily life quickly began to break down. Milk deliveries became nearly impossible. Refuse trucks could no longer move, and rubbish started piling up in the streets. Inside homes, frost even formed on the inner sides of windows. The country was slowly freezing to a halt. The railways were soon paralyzed as well. Some trains froze directly onto the tracks, and in a few cases workers had to light fires beneath the engines just to get them moving again. Rail services across the country were canceled or severely delayed. People struggled through snow and ice simply to reach work. Even football felt the effects of the freeze. Hundreds of matches were postponed, and the season stretched far longer than expected. This winter was affecting every part of life in Britain. Farmers suffered some of the worst consequences. Snow lay so deep across the countryside that many farmers could not even reach their livestock. In some areas, animals went without food for days. Crops froze solid in the fields. The ground became so hard that farmers sometimes had to use drills just to dig vegetables out of the soil. Wildlife also suffered heavy losses. For farmers, this was not simply an inconvenient winter. It was a slow disaster unfolding across frozen land. As the cold tightened its grip, infrastructure began to fail. Water pipes froze across the country, leaving many homes without running water for weeks. People carried buckets into the streets to collect drinking water from tankers. Power cuts became common. Most homes had no central heating, forcing families to gather around a single coal fire while the rest of the house remained bitterly cold. The frozen ground created unexpected problems as well. In some places, the earth became so hard that graves could not be dug. Despite everything, people found ways to cope. Rivers and lakes froze over with thick layers of ice. In some places, people skated across frozen water. Children sledged down snowy hills, built snowmen, and turned the frozen landscape into a giant playground. For a generation that had lived through war, this was simply another challenge. Neighbors helped one another. Communities shared what little they had. The winter was harsh, but it also created a powerful sense of solidarity. As the freeze continued, extraordinary scenes appeared along the coast. In some areas, the sea itself began to freeze, stretching far out from the shoreline. Harbors struggled to remain open as ice built up along the coast. Rivers and estuaries froze solid. For a time, parts of England looked less like the English Channel and more like the Arctic. Along the eastern coast, rivers and harbors became impossible to navigate. Ships were trapped in frozen waterways. Boats sat locked in place as thick ice covered the surface of the rivers. The canal system also froze, bringing transport to a standstill. In some areas, explosives were used to break the ice and reopen ports. For weeks, maritime trade along Britain's eastern coastline was almost completely halted. Eventually, the weather began to change. Warmer winds slowly returned and the snow began to melt. Roads reappeared, rivers started to flow again, and life gradually returned to normal. Even today, that winter remains one of the most remarkable in British history. Because it was more than just a cold season. It was a moment when an entire country faced the power of nature together. And it became known simply as the Great Freeze. If you enjoy exploring forgotten moments of British history, don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments. Have you ever experienced a winter like this?